Hey everyone, Francis here from What a Hell of a Way to Die. If you've been wondering how you can support myself and Nate here on the show, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. Joining the Patreon at any level gets you access to our Discord server, one bonus episode a month, and early access to interviews. At the $5 level, you'll get more bonus content and an opportunity to vote on monthly Zoo Crew episodes. And at the $10 and up level, you'll get exclusive stickers, patches, and pins sent out to you every quarter. Your support means that we can keep our regular episodes free and make sure we don't have to rely on advertisers. If you can, please consider joining and supporting your two favorite veteran dads.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis, and with me today I have Texas journalist Christopher Hooks with me. Christopher, how are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing good. How have you been?
It's beautiful. It's been raining so much the last couple of weeks here, and now the sun's come out, which means all of the water that's in the ground is now about face height in humidity. So,
that's beautiful.
We're going through it here. I know Texas is it's a little bit hotter though, but on the drier side. What part of Texas are you in?
I'm in Austin. We've had a strange spring. This is the time when the weather is supposed to be really nice, but it's been really overcast and gray the entire time, and now it's about to get like really hot. So I feel kind of cheated.
Yeah, that sounds like a Midwest spring. It's either going to last 2 minutes or 2 weeks, and that's about all you get. So, Chris, I wanted you to come on because you had the opportunity to take part in a convention that I really wish that I could have gone to, which was the Hapsburg Convention of Plano, Texas. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Hapsburgs, they were a European dynasty. They ruled the Holy Roman Empire for a couple of hundred years. They had emperors all over the place, famously incestuous and very large in the jaw. If you go by the Charles II portrait, which people love to post constantly online. And they had a lot of offshoots. They created royalty and kings for countries like Spain, Portugal, Slovenia, all over the place. The Habsburgs ran shit for a while in Europe. They got ousted eventually, because who wants a monarchy, right? Especially a monarchy that doesn't want to, like, the British get away with it because the monarchy isn't really involved in the politics side of it, but the Habsburgs weren't gonna go for that. So they also produced an emperor of Mexico who got massively executed, like, very quickly. Turns out the Mexicans didn't want a Habsburg. Go figure. And furthermore, there is a Habsburg that is a poster, and I feel like we get a really great look into a very specific psyche here of being a dynastic royalty person who is poisoned by online, as much as the rest of us. So how long have you been following Eudard Hapsburg on Twitter?
Well, he's been... Right now, he's the ambassador to the Vatican for Viktor Orban, who's sort of the quasi-democratic, quasi-dictator of Hungary. So I guess I mostly knew him that way. He's not from one of the main branches of the family, but the most notable thing about him is that he is a Habsburg. And Viktor Orban's regime in Hungary, kind of right-wing regime, is really interested in cultivating relationships with the American right. And mostly what I do in my day job is follow the American right. So I had kind of been curious about this guy and this connection for a while. I actually tried to go to the Hapsburg convention last year, but I wasn't able to. I think maybe it sold out by the time I was aware of it. But
too many monarchists in Texas.
Too many monarchists in Texas. Yeah,
I really want to bring it back.
We have all kinds of freaky political ideologies here in Texas, and I hadn't had that much to do with Texas monarchists, but apparently there is a small but meaningful contingent of them here. Yeah,
and God bless them. I personally absolutely not with a monarchy, but I do love the people that are really into like this kind of old school cosplay, because the Habsburgs are still very centered in traditions and how things were in like the 1700s and stuff like that. They're not like they're not a royal family. They don't exist as a dynasty anymore. You just have the people that are descended from the last Habsburgs that ruled. So you do have like this long line of royalty that kind of hangs on to it, but they're not in charge of anything. Some of them have some, like you said, the ambassador to the Holy See, which is a completely made up job, but if it keeps a Habsburg out of trouble, why not? They were so bad that Austria created a law that said they couldn't come back, which has been kind of dismantled, but that's how much people didn't like the Habsburgs at the end of it. And I personally have been following Eudard for years on Twitter because he is, as I said, he's this strange amalgamation of dynasty who is also poisoned by online. He posts about doing things for the Holy See and meeting popes and these beautiful cathedrals, but will also like give his opinions about Star Wars movies and shit, and talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like he's a huge nerd. He's a fascist. Obviously, he believes that they have a right to be kings and queens and shit again. And Viktor Orban wrote the forward for his book. So, and Viktor Orban is a fascist. So like that's, but he seems really harmless, I feel. Maybe you got, and I only see him on Twitter. So maybe if we start kind of diving into Habsburg Convention, you can give us more of a who Eudard is and who these people are in the flesh.
Yeah, I mean, Eudard is, like you say, his online presence is very strange. He talks a lot about Neon Genesis Evangelion. He identifies as a weeb. He wrote a zombie movie that was never produced in Austria. He was kind of one gets the impression of like a wealthy dilettante who somehow became ambassador to the Vatican for this pretty noxious regime. But in all of the media that I have consumed where he's appeared, interviews he's done and whatever, he's never been anything but unfailingly polite. He does have this kind of like noblesse oblige thing going where it's almost impossible to imagine him being rude to somebody. And actually, after I wrote this story, which was making fun of him and some of the people at this convention, I think justifiably so, he wrote me a very nice note that said he was glad that I had a nice time, and that if I was ever in Rome, I should look him up, which I hope to do someday.
I would absolutely go hang out with the Habsburg. I'd go, yeah, we'll go podcast with him. I know he's done some podcasts. I am a fallen Catholic, but I still do like the aesthetics. So like that's another reason I like following him, is because he's always posting pictures in Rome of the Vatican or of reliquaries and stuff like that. And while I am not Catholic anymore, and the Catholic Church has a lot of problems with it, obviously, I do love that old aesthetic. I do love these cathedrals and these parts of religious history that have been around for 500, 600, 700 years. And that's that. And yeah, and he never is, like you said, he's never mean. He's never like, oh, should, crush more, American cops should be beating up more people or anything. He stays out of that shit. Like he doesn't, maybe he's got opinions on it. I've never heard them, and I appreciate that out of him. The last joke that I made, and I'm always, I like to quote tweet him, but I'm always very careful about it, that if I'm kind of teasing at the Habsburgs, it's not going to be enough to make him want to block me, because I don't want to lose access to this guy, right? And a lot of times when his tweets get retweeted a lot and other people start seeing them, you'll start seeing people post about inbreeding or posting Charles II. And sometimes he blocks, sometimes he mutes. I would say leave it alone, because you're going to miss out on some great, tweets about Dune and shit like that too. Like just to see, like, and he's not saying anything profound. Like the last thing was he was talking about how the Phantom Menace, the Star Wars Phantom Menace, actually aged well, and it's a good movie, which is like which is a weird thing that everybody is suddenly like rallying around, because I've rewatched it in the last like 5 years, and it's not a good movie.
Right.
But
They're not good. It's so strange that these movies are being rehabilitated. I mean, there's some things that are interesting about them with the new Star Wars movies, are much worse. Maybe it makes them look a little better, but they're not good movies.
No. And see, this is what we could be podcasting with Edward about. Like we could have these conversations. He also posts movie things that I agree with. Like the new Gollum movie that's coming out, he's just like, oh, they're gonna have to. They're just trying to like suck as much content as they can and fill every nook and cranny. And like, I agree, leave it alone, or do the Silmarillion. Don't make stuff up. We've got plenty of Lord of the Rings stuff. So like, I love that he is a massive nerd on the internet and post Catholic stuff and just keeps his like political beliefs to himself. I appreciate that about him. So you said you tried to go to it last year. What is it? Why do you want to do Hapsburg? I know you talk about that you do a lot of reporting on the right wing in Texas. Is there a big Texas Hapsburg connection that's happening here?
Not that I'm aware of. At this convention, Edward was said a couple times that Texas had been Habsburg land, which I guess is sort of true. The Habsburgs ruled Spain for many years, and like very early on in Texas colonization. And as you mentioned, they owned Mexico twice, first through the Spanish Habsburgs and then later through this French guy. But no, monarchism is not something that typically gets a big hearing here, and so I was interested for that reason. Yeah.
I was going to say, how many people were at this convention?
A few hundred, I would say. Okay. They got a pretty big venue, and they did not fill it. There were quite a few empty seats, but it appeared to have.
It's grown. Only because I live in St. Louis, man. It was like $35. I would have done the VIP tour as well. Like I want to get all of it.
Next year, man, I'll meet you there.
All right.
The first year I was skeptical. The second year, maybe I'll go back as a fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I write a lot about French politics in Texas, and I'm struck again and again by how much of French politics and a lot of non-French politics is sort of role playing. It's people who maybe feel a little lost and don't have a sense of meaning in their lives, and they're looking for something that allows them to live a grand story or to have a reason to get up in the morning. And sometimes that's really destructive. Like you go to a QAnon conference and a lot of these people are really lost, and they're getting more lost. But the monarchists, I'm not a monarchist. The people I talked to in the audience at this thing, I thought it was a bit silly, but it's like, it's far from the worst thing that you can get into in America in 2024. Mostly these were like, yeah.
I was gonna say, being a monarchist, that's in America, that's not a threat to me. Like if you're a right wing libertarian who believes the government is stealing all your tax money and you've got 27 guns, I worry about that guy. But somebody who is just really into swords and flags, like because that's what it seems most monarchists are really into, is just having lots of flags, which you can do without needing a whole political ideology based around it. But whatever, people are going to attach what they want to it. But I do believe that the monarchists themselves in America are more of a curiosity to me. They don't seem harmful, I guess. Do you kind of get that same? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the monarchist thing, and specifically the Habsburg thing, I guess, it's really associated with traditional Catholics, right-wing Catholics. And in America, there's an element of role playing to that too, because there are a lot of Catholic right wing intellectuals who get really into integralism, or Francisco Franco and Salazar. They've been doing that more in recent years, and that's more menacing. But it's role play too, because there are too many Protestants with guns in this country for you to ever take control of the government and do the shit that you want to do. They would never let you do that, and so it's explicitly role playing, and I think on some level these guys must know that too.
And I'll be honest, most of the new Catholics these days are Protestants anyway. They just really like the aesthetics of the Catholic Church, so they play with that one, but then say, "Oh, I don't want to listen to the Pope." All right, Protestant.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how it works. Sorry. So take me through the day. It was a 1-day event, right?
Yeah, it was a 1-day event. It was more like half a day. It was I think it was something like five hours. Yeah, it was in It was in a performing arts center owned by Plano ISD. First of all, I guess I should say it's in Plano, Texas, which is there are a lot of nice things about Plano, but it's like the most stereotypical Texas suburban community. It's north of Dallas. It has a couple 100,000 people. It's like a little right wing, I guess. But it's a place where the distinguishing features of the landscape are like Panera breads. But it was at this performing arts center owned by Plano ISD, which is kind of interesting. It's like a temple to American civic religion. This really beautiful, expensive performing arts center owned by the school, kind of modernist performing arts center. And inside there's this big stage with a black background. And there's like 2 or 3 kind of a little bit sad Hapsburg flags, and a couple people sitting on stage. 3 members of the Hapsburg family, Edward and his son, and one of their cousins. A Benedictine abbot from Clear Creek, Oklahoma, who barely said anything and seemed maybe a little unhappy to be there. And 2 kind of right-wing Catholics. The ostensible purpose of this conference was the Habsburg family is trying to get one of the last Habsburg emperor of Austria made into a saint. And this conference was sort of to spread the word of the man they called the Blessed Karl. And a lot of the events of the day were about the things that made him glorious and good.
Yes, the blessed. So give you a little Austrian and Catholic history on this, because I have looked into the Blessed Karl. To be a saint, you have to have 2 miracles associated to you. And sometimes they get like a third just in case, because Pope John Paul II has been sainted. And from what I read, there was one of the miracles, they're like, we can't use this as a miracle because like there's a 1 in like 1,000 chance that this person just got better on their own, because occasionally that happens. So we have to find another miracle. And I believe Karl only has 1 miracle. So they got to find a second one. They got to find some other way that Karl comes back and blesses one of the common folk or something to get that sainthood. And I'm sure there's a lot of conversation that goes on about, what can be considered a miracle and things like that. So that's where he stands, where he's kind of like, blessed is I don't know if I want to say a saint ranking, but that is something that the Catholic Church bestows, is blessed. But it's not full sainthood yet.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I mean, the Catholic Church is this magnificent, holy bureaucracy. And it was one of the more interesting things about the conference was sort of, you were talking to an activist was there who was trying to advance the sainthood. And she was explaining to the audience how to farm miracles, how to get the right kind of miracle from Karl so that it could be attributed to him by the Vatican. And so she was saying his wife is also up for sainthood. She's a little bit further behind in the process, but she was saying, pray every night for a miracle, make it a good miracle, preferably a life or death miracle, and only pray to one of them, because if you pray to both of them and they both deliver you the miracle, it won't count for either of them. So it was sort of like, once you get divine intervention, report it to the appropriate authorities immediately and make sure that you've signed the correct forms, which I thought was kind of charming. But yeah,
Karl, you don't want to come in there with a miracle and be like, yeah, I was praying to both of them. Like, well, sorry, get out of here. The leg you regrew no longer counts. Sorry.
Yes. But he's been attributed with 1 miracle. This man who was one of the most powerful people in the world in 1914 or 1916, the former emperor of Austria, got to heaven. And the line is that he cured a Baptist woman in Louisiana of terminal cancer, which maybe he did.
How do they have? What's the provenance on that one? Was a Baptist woman in Louisiana praying to a deposed king?
If I remember correctly, some Catholic women in Orlando, Florida, were praying for her. And I don't know, maybe in the Catholic Church it counts for more if you save a Baptist, or maybe it counts for less. I don't know. But some Catholic women apparently became aware of the story of Emperor Karl and started praying to him for intercession, and maybe he delivered it to this fortunate Baptist woman in Louisiana.
I mean, one way or another, it's working out for that woman in Louisiana. So I think that's where the true power lies. But I got to think of what king should I pray to start getting some miracles down. I don't know. But it is interesting that they decide. I mean, they're a very Catholic family. Obviously, Eddard being the ambassador of the Holy See, always in Rome, always doing Catholic stuff. So it kind of makes sense. But I didn't realize that this whole thing was just we need to get this guy sainted, which is, something they've been trying for years anyway. And it keeps them busy. Like, right? The Habsburgs want to get this guy sainted. They're not trying to take over Europe. It works out for me, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the members of the Habsburg family all have their own hobbies. One of them is a race car driver, and they're involved in European politics, I think, across the political spectrum. Some better than others, from my perspective. But the guy who's in charge, Karl von Hapsburg, is all about antiquities and making sure if you move something from one place to another, it stays. It doesn't get destroyed. It doesn't get messed up or anything like that. Was the Cultural Protection Organization Blue Shield that later became Blue Shield International. So, and he was in protests and stuff in the 90s. So like there are some Habsburgs that, and even though he doesn't, he lives in Austria, but he doesn't use any of his titles. One, because it's illegal, and two, apparently he doesn't want to. So, across the board, the Habsburgs really have turned into a family of nerds that. It doesn't seem like any of them really want to be in charge of anything. They just want to be kept busy, which fair enough. Yeah. I don't know of any member of the family that has expressed a desire to, return to real political power, but you have to imagine that they're kind of thinking about it, right? Like if you're a member of that family, you must, in the same way that if you're born into the Kennedy family, you must do a little bit of thinking about, like, what if I went for it?
Yeah, what if I could become president? And luckily we have, even if they are doing the shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you land among the stars. Eddard seems pretty happy. They all seem like they're doing okay. One races, cars. I just feel like they've all been contained. At this point, the Habsburgs have been properly, kind of tamped down. There's going to be a lot of people who want monarchies to come back. They're all insane. Nobody has to listen to them. But also, it's not as easy in the year 2024 to go out with a bag full of gold and a rousing speech and raise 100,000 peasants to revolt against somebody and make you their king. Like you can't depose people like you used to. Especially the way these guys are still into swords and pikes. You're not gonna manage that when the other side's got AK-47s.
Yeah, they're like the dog that's in the car. There's a note on a window. The AC is on, and they're listening to their favorite music, and they'll be all right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the strange thing is this sort of effort to elevate Blessed Karl to sainthood. This was a guy who killed a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
The Habsburgs were not great people, as it turns out. The Habsburgs today, fine. The Habsburgs of history, not so much.
No, yeah. Karl was the emperor of Austria-Hungary for the last 2 years of World War I. His dad started World War I. He was a field marshal, probably not a very good one, and sent a lot of men to their deaths. When he was emperor, the Austrian army used chlorine gas on its enemies and killed a lot of people. He did not have a great record as leader. I think even within the Catholic Church, my sense is there is some trepidation about elevating a man to sainthood who...
What is an emperor like that? Yeah, I mean, you can, and look, this is not to say that like all the saints have completely clean backgrounds, but like usually the saints come to God in the end and renounce their ways. I'm not too sure if the blessed did that at all.
The argument for sainthood seems to be that he was a fail son. He bore that failure well. He was a good dad. which I don't know. There are a lot of Phil sons
Oh,
out
so
there.
I get to be I get to be a saint now. I got to get some people
why
to start
not?
praying to me. Like,
I mean, if you find a Baptist woman in Louisiana, I guess the world is your oyster. Who you can help with your powers.
so you talked to some of the people who were at this event as well. So what was kind of the what was the vibe that you got off of some of these? You know, I gotta think that like not all of them were dyed in the wool monarchists. There had to be other people like who you, or if I was there, me, who was just there for the spectacle kind of thing.
No, yeah, I think a lot of people in the audience just kind of came to see a spectacle. I think this event was heavily promoted in Catholic churches around the Dallas area, and you see a poster that says "Come meet a Hapsburg." Like, I don't know, I might come out for that. The impression I got from most of the members of the audience was that these are like, these are pretty decent people who just wanted to come out and see something interesting. The one exception maybe is some of the members of the audience were members of a Carlist circle in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they seemed a good deal more menacing, but there weren't that many of them. So Carlism is this like freak faction of Spanish monarchists who, since the 1830s, have sort of been organizing each other generation after generation to these kind of paramilitary groups. They're very right-wing.
These are the
yes.
guys who have cast aside the swords and picked up the guns to do some monarchy.
Yeah, you might be aware of them, even if you don't think you are. You might have seen pictures of guys in like red berets, and they often carry around this flag with the red cross. It's a really strange organization. A couple years ago, apparently, they set up a Carlist circle in Irving, Texas. So those are some people who are much more committed to monarchism and right-wing politics. And they say on their website that they want to return Texas to the rule of the Bourbon dynasty, a completely different branch of royals than the Hapsburgs. Actually, they were enemies for most of their history. But I guess I would say good luck. Go for it.
That is a big hill to climb right there.
Yeah.
Let's just say, I don't know. I mean, return was Texas. I know Texas was part of the Habsburg, but did the Bourbons ever run any part of Mexico?
Yeah, they did. The Bourbons took over. A branch of the Bourbon family took over Spain after the Habsburgs had to give it up.
Gotcha, yeah.
But it's, it's pretty, the connection is pretty thin. The Carlists are people who believe that this one branch of the Bourbon family are ordained by God to rule everything, basically.
God, I wonder what those meetings are like, Like, what do you get together with your fellow Carlists? What do you get together and pray, do a little Bible study, and then try to figure out how to car bomb somebody? I don't know. Like,
I bet they're really strange, man. The vibe I got from this group of people was not great. There was a Carlist who got up to speak at this conference, and he was this handsome, older Spanish man with a very thick accent. And the young Carlists that came were all like 24 and had similar facial hair. And I just kind of imagined them like getting together and cuddling, It seemed like a bad deal.
Like, how do you, like, I don't know. This just seems like an old man thing. I'm just confused as to how, I mean, look, I guess, young men get brought into violent ideologies one way or the other. I suppose Carlism is not any different. It's just, it just seems like real specific, a real specific thing to be really into.
Yeah, I mean, I get getting drawn into violent ideologies, but this is just like some nerd shit,
Right. My mother-in-law loves monarchical history. You can love monarch history and, dynastic histories and do all the studying that you want without having to also be an insane right-winger. It is possible. You can just be normal about it. You can't just be a normal nerd. Be a nerd. It's fine. And you can also like guns. That's fine too. Just don't put the two together. All right. So you mentioned some of the speakers. We got the Carlists. We've got the person who's talking about bringing up the sainthood. What did Eudard talk about? What did the star of the show? Did he get up there? Did he talk? Did you have a little one-on-one with him?
Yeah. Edward got up and talked. I mean, there was sort of a contrast between the Americans that were taking part in this conference and the Habsburgs themselves. The Habsburgs themselves didn't have very much to say. Or Edward, when he talks, he tends to say, typical Catholic stuff like, choose your partner well, have lots of kids, that kind of thing. He offers kind of general life advice.
That is real easy Catholic advice. Unlike the Chiefs kicker recently, you can just be like, have a house of the gospel, love your partner, have lots of babies, make them Catholics too. Very simple.
Yeah. The Americans who got up and followed them kind of had much darker things to say. Where America is swimming around the moral sewer, it must follow the example of the Blessed Karl. We must return. America must atone for what it did to take the Habsburgs out of power. That was a big theme. A writer, Charles Coulomb, got up and said that Woodrow Wilson and Freemasons and socialists and the United States had sinned against God by removing the Habsburgs from power, and that it had to atone and make reparations.
What did we do? Well, just general World War I. Like, it seemed like Austria kicked out the Habsburgs.
Yeah, I mean, it basically did. All of the countries of Austria-Hungary kicked out the Habsburgs. We didn't do that much, to be honest. I mean, the story that they have is that Woodrow Wilson screwed over the Habsburg family, but that's not right, I don't think. Like, all of the nations of Austria-Hungary said, "Fuck you, Habsburgs. We're done." And there wasn't anything that they could do at that point, and deservedly so, because the Habsburgs started the fucking war,
Yeah, kind of on them, this whole thing. Like, they could. I don't know what kind of power they could still be in, but if they could have pulled their heads out of their asses back in 1916, maybe things would have gone a little bit different for them.
Yeah, but I think it was almost it was like a QAnon style story of how the Habsburgs had lost power. The Americans were really kind of trying to take other Americans into this story of all this glory that had been lost, and what the democratic United States had done to destroy God's kingdom on earth.
And it makes, I guess it does kind of make sense that people are getting drawn into this, because the end goal is still the same, right? It's the abolition or the destruction of the American government, atonement, bringing somebody else in. Basically what it comes down to is, I don't like the way things are going right now, so we need to violently overthrow it and put in X, and whatever X is. For these guys, it's a Habsburg for some reason, but for everybody else, it's, Donald Trump or some other insane dictatorship of some kind. So it all follows along the same lines. I do kind of wonder if, like, it, America, as it seems to be continuing down this line, if the Habsburgs are finally going to be like, no, you guys are too weird for us. We can't do this anymore.
I wondered that too. That's one of the ironies of the conference that I came away with was all of these right-wing Catholics are very suspicious of like American pluralism, and they think that the problem with America is that there are too many kinds of people who believe too many kinds of things. But the way the Habsburgs praise themselves, and the way even Americans praise the Habsburgs, was saying that in their empire they had a lot of pluralism and tolerance, and that's true. They did. Before this conference, I read an account written by one of the American soldiers that fought the Habsburg Empire in World War I. Most American soldiers who fought in World War I fought in France, obviously, and they had a pretty bad time. But there was one infantry regiment that was sent to Italy. As far as I know, the only Americans that have fought Austria, or the Austria-Hungary. And he wrote an account after the war of traveling across the remains of Austria-Hungary as it was coming apart. And the one thing he said in all of these cities was, there's an incredible amount of diverse peoples here from who believe in many different religions and come from many different parts of Europe and beyond Europe. And he said, it reminded me of like Chicago, it reminded me of American cities. And that's my favorite part of America. It's something I believe in, that Republican tradition of pluralism and tolerance. but these people at this conference saying that Austria-Hungary had this are the same people saying America should not have it, that it's a problem when we do it. And while these people are role playing, I think this tendency on the right is something that is bodes ill for everybody.
Yeah, it's troubling. Like, this is something like this. Like, if defunct royalty wanted to do touring stuff like this all the time, like, I would love it if HapsCon went on the road and take HapsCon to Chicago, take it, come meet a Hapsburg. Come hang out, and we'll try to get this guy sainted, and if not, we'll have a good time regardless. And leave out all the weird American stuff. Just bring the Hapsburgs. Let Eudard talk about Evangelion for an hour. Give us a whole breakdown on the last episode. I feel like we'll probably do a little bit better. But yeah, the mixture of violent right-wing ideology that comes with this, which is the same violent right-wing ideology that comes with a lot of these things. They end up being religion-based, a lot of it Catholic-based, which is really frightening. As a former Catholic, like I don't like seeing, like, I'm not a Catholic, but I have respect for the religion, and I was raised in not this way. I was raised in a turn the other cheek. Jesus said, love everybody. Quit being an asshole to people. He got nailed to a tree for your sins, and you should feel thankful for that and reflect on that. I come from the guilty Catholics. I don't know what kind of Catholics these are, but they need a lot more guilt because they don't have enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking like this. So, Chris, what's your kind of takeaway from Hapsburg convention? I know we're gonna try to go next year, but do you? I guess did you get to meet Edward? Did you get to do any handshakes with anybody?
No, I tried to. I've talked to Edward a little bit since the story came out. I mostly tried to talk to the Carlists, and they all blew me off, which was unfortunate. But I guess my takeaway is, the feeling of belonging that I'm looking for in my life it might be filled by joining this Carlist circle. I think that might be the future.
I had to wear berets in the army, and I'm never going back to it. So they've already lost me with the headgear.
Oh, really? Okay.
Maybe a red. Well, I don't want to wear a red baseball cap and then have somebody think that I'm a MAGA person. So we'll have to figure something out.
Oh man, you can make a lot of money with that. I think making the Carlos berets with the MAGA stuff on the brim.
Oh, shit.
And maybe they would think that was blasphemous, but
did they have vendors there? Did they have swag? Did you get any Hapsburg magnets?
They had so much swag. I had forgotten about that until now, but yeah, they had all of these. They had all of these guys outside selling trinkets from Austria-Hungary and like woodcuts with Karl's face on them. I was shocked at the amount of swag. There are apparently a lot of Catholic vendors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that have just a line on Austria-Hungary gear in a way that I would not have expected.
Yeah, I do vendor events myself, and I would be interested, where all these people come from, where they're sourcing their stuff, and yeah, can we get away with selling MAGA Carlist berets? Well, if nobody was selling them there, that's obviously a need that needs to be filled, and I think we can do that.
I know I said that was a good idea. They might kill you. I'm not entirely sure.
It's
probably not worth it. Yeah.
They don't like Donald Trump. That's fine. I mean, they have their own king, so.
I don't know what they like, man. These people were like aliens. They had 15 minutes at this conference to try to explain what Carlism was, and it's just indecipherable.
I've been scanning the Wikipedia, and yeah, I don't know what they want. They're just Spanish conservatives.
I didn't even know this until the piece came out, but apparently the Carlists that were there were part of a schismatic faction within Carlists. So,
oh, nice. We got Carlist Protestants.
Once you become Carlist, which is how do you become a Carlist in 2024? There's two big factions you can be part of, and they fucking hate each other. So,
so they're just like the leftists, aren't they?
They're just like leftists, yeah.
Constantly splitting and hating one another. That's fine. Chris, I appreciate you coming onto the show to talk about this. Where can people find your stuff?
Oh, I write all over. I mostly write for Texas Monthly about Texas politics. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, the website formerly known as Twitter, as CD_hooks. I'm around, man. Catch me on the flip.
Yeah, and we will definitely do our best to meet up in Plano next year. Go to CarlCon, and maybe we can. You know what? Maybe we'll get really lucky. One of us will get hit by a bus, and the other one can pray to Carl to bring us back, and we can be the saviors. We can be the Carlists, the head Carlists, by bringing another miracle to the blessed. Are you up for that? Are you good with getting hit by a bus?
That's beautiful, man. I mean, we can flip a coin or something, figure out who's getting hit by the bus and who's praying. But I love that vision. You know, there's still grace and goodness in this world. It's still, we can still redeem it.
You got to be the change you want to see in the world. So
Absolutely.
Step in front of a bus and start praying. Chris, thank you so much for being on. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Zoom, 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 zoom.